You're listening to the New Dominion podcast, where we engage in curious and faith-filled conversations about stewarding your health in community with others. We're so glad you're here. Let's get started. I am Kirsten Hansen. I'm a functional nutrition practitioner in St. Louis, Missouri, here with my co-host, Dr. Abby Keene, who is also a functional nutrition practitioner and doctor of chiropractic care, and Taylor Keene, her husband, who is a licensed counselor here in St. Louis. And this is our season 2.
Woo! We've made it through a whole season. How do we do that?
We just did the next thing. We just kept doing the next right thing.
And here we are. Season 2 is going to be, as Taylor described it earlier, how'd you say that with the iceberg? That was deep.
Oh, if last season was the top of the iceberg, obvious to everybody above the waterline, this season is further down, but not below the waterline yet, because we're going deeper, but there's too much to go real deep and not overwhelm both ourselves and the audience. So I think there's...
As we gathered this morning, I printed out 3 pages of notes for one episode today, and Kirsten and Taylor both looked at me and said,
no,
that's overwhelming.
No, please don't do that.
Let's not. So with that being said, we just want to remind everybody why we're here. As Kirsten announced, we are having faith-filled and curious conversations. So although we all have a lot of experience in our fields of study, from chiropractic, how the body works, nutrition, and mental health, we don't like to call ourselves experts because there's so much to learn. And that's why we want to have curious conversations to help you, our audience, our client base, to continue to learn with us. Science, really, I think at the core of science, the definition of science is that it keeps changing. We keep learning. You keep throwing out hypotheses, studying the world around you, and see what it says. And sometimes it will tell you what you thought you were thinking, and sometimes it will tell you we're totally off base. And so that's why we're here, to have these conversations. So season 2 is, like Taylor said, we're going to go a little bit deeper and talk about just more specific topics. We were very, very thought heavy, paradigm heavy, more esoteric, I feel like, last season. And we want to really kind of get dirty this season and play in the mud a little bit as we educate our listeners on more specific topics. So with that, Kirsten, you want to introduce today's episode?
Sure. Our episode is called You Want Me to Eat That?
Love it.
What in the world does that even mean? Like, where are we coming from here?
What do you think, Taylor? What does that bring in your...
I think of disgust from Inside Out, going,
movie?
Yeah, like, ew, you want me to eat that? Like, what, Griffin, our son, towards broccoli or Brussels sprouts, or our daughters in reference to anything that has a texture they don't like.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so, we're going to, talk about food today.
Food, what it does for your body, either positively or negatively, how it can both build you up or hurt you, I guess. And Abby, I really liked when we were talking earlier about the perspective that there are probably 2 different groups of people who would look at something like a vegetable and go, you want me to eat, like one group that might look at something like vegetables and go, oh, you want me to eat that? And another group that might look at packaged foods and go, oh, you want me to eat that? And we are trying to talk about food in general and how we approach looking at food and what it does to and for our bodies.
Yeah, and I think, there's a little disclaimer here that I would like to say of...
A little one? I think large disclaimer might be helpful here, too.
What's the disclaimer that you're thinking of?
Well, that we're still in process with this whole thing. And so I think we've said it in season 1, but everybody who encounters specifically Abby in public places around food, they're always like, don't watch me eat this piece of carrot cake. And Abby's like, Why? I'm going to eat the carrot cake too. And so we're not coming at this as a look down our nose, you're failing if you're not doing this. But we're, again, curious conversations to kind of not just stay where we were. As a child of the 80s and 90s, processed food was all that was readily available. And I'm still in process of forgiving my mom for feeding me spam when I was younger.
Literal spam.
Literal
Literal.
spam.
And yeah, so with that, I think food can bring a lot of shame. Food's a big part of our health stories, our health journeys. And I know many people in my practice, when we come in and we start to talk about food, there's just a lot of shame. And so I really want to start out by just saying, this is, like Taylor said, this isn't a judgment. This is a what is the next step in your health journey that can get you to a better place. And I hope that today's episode is going to be a few things. One, educational. We're trying not to do too deep of a dive into food additives and stuff like that. We did a little bit at the end of last season. That could be a whole season in and to itself. But when it comes to those things, we are asking that you would just have an open mind. We want to take politics out of this. Food has gotten really political in the last few years, and we don't we don't align with one or the other. We're just trying to get information out to people, unbiased, research based information, so that you can start making the best decision for you and your family. So that's number one, education. Number two, practical. How do you start living this out? There's a big difference if you are in a rural area and you are a farmer, what your food source is going to look like versus if you are living in inner city St. Louis or in the suburbs and you're shopping at Super Walmart. There's so many different situations out there. So we're going to try to provide a good many what are the next steps that we can do so that you can figure out what is the best one for your situation. It might not be what's good for your mom or your sister or your best friend. Those are the two big things, right? And of course, like always, we're going to try to talk about the physical aspect, the spiritual aspect, and the emotional aspect.
Right.
Cool.
Let's go.
Let's do it. Who wants to start?
Oh,
Kirsten, I think you should start.
okay. I should start. Okay. As I was thinking about this and thinking about what does the average person going average person what do people think
It is.
about as they go to the grocery store and think about feeding themselves? There's so much information out there being thrown at us all the time, and I get overwhelmed with it. I talk to friends and family members who get really overwhelmed, and people who, out of the overwhelm, just kind of throw in the towel. And so, as I was like, throw in the towel and go, well, I'm just going to go out to eat because then I don't have to make the decision. I constantly, as I'm walking through the grocery store aisles, I just can order one thing from the menu and there we go. That's what I'm eating. I'm hungry. I don't want to think about it. So I tried to make this super practical and think about how do I grocery shop. Number one, shopping the perimeter of the grocery store when you go there, when you choose to go there and not straight to a restaurant. So shopping the perimeter of the grocery store aisle is something that you hear a lot, but here are the reasons why you do that. That is typically where the produce is, where the meats, dairies, and produce are around the edges of the grocery store. And the reason that you do that is because you're looking at food that is the closest, like derived the closest derivative from like its original source. So you're
It's living. It's a living
living
food.
food, yes. So it's like been picked, yeah, living food. Love that, love that terminology.
Because it will
Yeah,
decompose, right? And can I insert a little bit of history
you can
here?
insert throughout. Yes, lots of history.
Well, I'm just thinking as we were preparing for this, I thought, how did we get here? Right? My grandparents had farms. My great grandparents actually had more farms. I wouldn't say farms, but they had plots of gardens that they were feeding themselves with. And so I grew up seeing them doing that, but yet we also grew up on TV dinners. And so some here, it's like, how did we get here? And really, we just started getting this more after World War II, industrial complex really kicked in. And it was, we're going to make this easy for the consumer. You no longer have to work as hard to provide dinner for your family. You can just buy the TV dinner that's already frozen. And all you have to do is put it in, as Taylor and I call it, the science box. Just put it in the microwave and warm it up, right? And it was so convenient, especially for our families as our generation of moms started entering the workforce more, and was challenging for, I think, for families to make homemade meals all the time, and it became very easy. But I think in that we lost the education piece. We lost moms or dads, whoever's cooking to their kids, of this is how you form a meal. This is how you
Mhm.
meal prep. This is how you grocery shop. When Taylor and I worked in the woods with delinquent teenage boys, one of the things that we did with them every week was plan a shopping list of what we were going to feed. There's 12 boys and 3 counselors. And we had, how many days was it? 2 days
Yeah.
in campsite
Hmm.
that we cooked and prepared food for 6 meals total. The rest of the meals were up at the lodge, and they were cooked for us by wonderful ladies. But it helped teach the kids, okay, well, what's a balanced meal? We need a
Mhm.
protein, we need a vegetable, we need a grain. And that gave those kids some ownership. But we've lost that. And I'm realizing as my kids have grown up and talk to their friends' parents and all that, there's this disconnect that kids don't quite understand how food actually fuels our body and drives things. And so the living stuff on the outside of the perimeter of the grocery store could decompose quickly and then rot. And so it's not good. The stuff that's in the center has a shelf life of, we don't even know how long. Like, it could go a long time because it's been denatured. Those living things aren't there. So it doesn't ever rot. And so I love that point, to give people the why
Yeah.
behind why that's so much better than your box of cereal.
Yeah. Would it be fair in the decomposition? I'm just thinking about it, the food being able to, or being faster to decompose, those perimeter whole living food items being, they decompose faster and they are going to expire faster. So that's not sitting, they're not a shelf staple.
Hmm.
Would it be fair to say we want those things to decompose in our bodies? Like right
What?
now in
Well,
our
I
bodies?
What?
well, I mean, they have a purpose, right? They
Right.
have a purpose. And so the things that are living in there are enzymes and stuff that break things down, right? When you eat a piece of fruit, you're getting fiber. And that fiber is going to feed your gut bacteria. You're getting some sugars, but they're not processed sugars. They're actually supposed to be mixed in with minerals, because as you digest and utilize sugar in your body, you also utilize minerals. So the whole food complex and God's beautiful creation is that when He gives us sugar in nature, He gives us the stuff to process that sugar efficiently and appropriately. What has happened because of our kind of industrialized model of food creation is that we did two things for shelf stable foods and creating those boxed foods. We took things that we found scientifically in food, the vitamin B, the vitamin C, the folate, those things that we studied and what we learned about, and we made them in a lab and we enriched these products with those items, thinking, oh, it's the same molecular structure, it'll do the same thing. And we just had this, yeah, that makes sense. But I think science is interesting because we don't know what we don't know. We didn't know that different minerals and vitamins need other minerals and vitamins to get utilized efficiently. And so when we put them into a boxed food, it doesn't have all the micronutrients. Like vitamin C, it's really cool. Vitamin C, if you imagine a circle, and you, in the center of that circle is a nucleus of, that's the actual like ascorbic acid, okay, which is what
Everybody.
everybody associates with vitamin C. That's what you see on your whatever supplement or your food box, like ascorbic acid, right? But vitamin C complex is ascorbic acid in the center of that nucleus, and then it's surrounded by a bunch of micronutrients that help you use ascorbic acid. So when we just put in ascorbic acid from a chemically made lab somewhere related to Kellogg's or something, you're missing the micronutrients. Whereas if you go out and you eat an orange, we all know that has ascorbic acid and vitamin C, you're getting the whole food complex. You're getting the micronutrients that the body needs to absorb that. And that goes for every single micronutrient, macronutrient that's out there. If you're eating a living food, you're getting all the extra stuff that it needs to process what's in there. And the food in the middle of the grocery store doesn't do that.
I've never thought about that.
So you're saying Pop Tarts aren't good?
I feel like you should get kicked off the podcast if that's
Just kidding. I mean, there's just because I think I've said something along those lines without the complete knowledge of, because I hear you talk and then I go, okay, so I know some of these things. And I tell somebody that drinking, you know, just something that says ascorbic acid on it isn't actually getting vitamin C because there's not actually, your body's not ingesting the vitamin C part of it because it's not actually processing it all together. So I didn't understand that piece of it. You know, sitting in the counseling room, I can say you need more vitamin C, and they're like, "Well, I drink orange juice every day." I'm like, "Yeah, you drink better orange juice or eat an orange." Or okay,
yeah.
so
Yeah. And yeah, to answer your question, Pop Tarts are not good.
I'm not even sure we know what Pop Tarts are. So can we just leave it at that?
I love the idea of it. And I loved a good Pop Tart growing up, but yeah.
Well, and to be frank, I mean, if we're just going to do this right, toaster strudels are far superior, and
That packet of goo is legit.
Right up there with
not
Right up there.
no spam or below is below Pop Tarts.
But that your Pop Tart toaster strudel does lead us into the conversation of, Kirsten, you alluded to it when you started talking of people are overwhelmed. We don't really know where to turn. And if we just kind of go along with the flow of culture and we don't fight against the current, we are going to fall into what many nutritionists, many holistic functional doctors call the standard American diet. And when we break that down into an acronym, it stands for SAD, right? Standard American diet. It's sad.
That's
Have
a
you never heard that?
no. That's amazing. That's wow.
Yeah. And so what we've
people
noticed,
get sad when they eat that food.
Emotionally, we'll
uh,
get there, but like your brain gets literally sad because you have no
yeah.
nutrients. So it will get there. But yeah,
So the space of the standard American SAD diet, we've seen, and I don't think we're the only ones. I think culture at large is starting to see this, is that we are so sick. We are like 27th in the world for our health in the United States. We are like like one of the last, I think, when it comes to English speaking countries as far as our healthcare. And there's a lot of countries in front of us. And so a lot of that is realizing like we have slowly just obtained all these chronic illnesses from autoimmune diseases and cardiovascular diseases. We're riddled. We're just riddled with obesity. Over 50% of Americans are obese by the latest poll that I read. That's astounding. And so there's a bigger problem at large, and there's multiple facets. We can't just say it's one thing. There's never just one thing when it comes to our health story. But I really think food's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we want to talk about it today.
Mm-hmm.
The standard American diet just does not have the same nutrients it did 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Growing our farms and having these huge farms and having more cities where we have to ship food into from farms does quite a few things. When you're growing so many vegetables on one piece of land and you have farms dedicated to just corn or soy and going back and forth and planting, you lose the soil's like ability to have a greater microbiome, and we become more dependent on Monsanto slash Bayer's like Roundup Ready plants and the
Mm-hmm.
glyphosate that they use, like that whole aspect changed our food, which is why recently President Trump actually protected. There's a lot of people kind of going and saying, hey, we don't want glyphosate anymore. It's wreaking havoc on a lot of systems. And President Trump actually made an announcement and said he's protecting it. But the reason why he's protecting it is because if we just canceled glyphosate tomorrow, our food production in the United States would crash because we have so much Roundup Ready crop that we can't transition. So he's playing more of the long game there of okay, how do we start shifting? And we can put a link to a couple things so you guys can read up on that. I don't want to go too deep,
Yeah.
but all of that to say, with just the industrialization of our food, we've lost a lot of nutrients because our soil is now
Yeah.
malnourished. And so, what were some? Do you remember some of the statistics off the top of your head, Kirsten? Like um, how deficient our food is. I wonder if I can find it.
Well, Kirsten, why don't you tell us a little about the labels that you're kind of getting to as Abby
That's
looks
a good
for that?
idea.
Yeah. So the my thought process on the labels is super practical, and I actually wonder, I could totally do that here. I actually wonder if it would be better kind of in the theory of how food has gotten to where, how we got to this point. We've talked about that a little bit. If we talk about its effect on mental health a little bit, and then take it into super, all right, how do I practically apply this? What can I be thinking about as I shop through the grocery store? Because I have some green light, yellow light, red light thoughts on
Mhm.
when you're shopping and when you're thinking about how you're cooking for yourself and what you're going to put in your mouth.
That's great. And I did find my
Oh, cool.
quote. So there's a book called Empty Harvest, which we can put in the show notes, but 80% of the nutritional dilution in our food has occurred in the last 30 to 40 years. And I think that book was written in the early 2000s, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. And then modern fruits like apples and bananas, when you compare them nutritionally to the ones that we had in 1975, 40 to 50, they've lost 40 to 55% of their iron and vitamin A. So even if you're getting organic,
Mm-hmm.
like good stuff, let's say all you do is shop at Whole Foods, the likelihood that what you're eating is the same as what our grandparents are eating, that thought's out the window, right? It's like half of what the nutrition is that we're getting. Was it that your dad said, Kirsten? Could you imagine what a strawberry tastes like in
Yeah,
heaven? Is that what
he
he
loves to
says?
say that. Can you
Like
imagine?
Yeah.
1975. It tastes like 1975.
Well, and his thought, just to go back to, all right, the if we are looking at the triangle of health and the physical, chemical, emotional aspects of it, and we as Christians are looking at all of this with the spiritual lens of God created our bodies, God created everything in the world that is going to, all of the food that is going to nourish our bodies. And we live in a world that has been marred by sin. And so, strawberries now, even if we get the best strawberries, or if we were to go back to the 1970s and eat a strawberry, that is still a part of a fallen world. And so, to think about, all right, how did God actually intend this?
Hmm.
Even like our taste buds have shifted, right? Not just because of
Yeah.
the chemicals that our bodies are now used to, but because of our bodies. Our bodies are broken down, or have we live in a fallen world, and our taste buds are not what they all that they could be. And so his like the hopefulness in him, I think, dreams about
Yeah.
what life is going to be like in heaven as we eat.
I love that. But I would also say your taste buds can change. So
Absolutely.
just putting that out there. Um, one of our daughters gave up processed sugar for Lent, and she was just saying over the weekend, she's like, I just love dates. Like, I don't even know how I ate sugar before because this, like, dates do it for me now. Like, it's like all I need. And I'm like, it's amazing how just a few weeks of not eating all the processed sugar, she's tasting
Mm-hmm.
real sugar out of real fruit. Can you imagine what that date tasted like in 1970?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Super date.
So, a super date.
And
So, yeah, let's
to go back to the chemical aspect and the episode title being You want me to eat that? I remember in high school, my friends and I did a challenge together to see who could go without soft drinks the longest. And I won because I just never went back. And now at this point, that was 25 years ago, and I have had sips of soft drinks at different points, but I will put something like that in my mouth and go, ugh, like I don't want, this is gross. I don't like the coating that it leaves in my mouth.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
but okay, Taylor, how do you see this as being applicable to mental health?
When people come in talking about anxiety or depression, one of the first things I'm talking to them about are typical things that are along the triangle of health. What is your sleep habits? What's your activity level? What are you eating? What's your community? Like those are the kind of the things I'm talking to them about. And there's research coming out now that how like the direct influence of how food affects just our brain in terms of anxiety or depression. And just so people are clear, anxiety and depression are the same coin. They're just opposite sides of the same coin. Like you don't, they're not so diametrically opposed. Like they exist in the same paradigm. They're just a spectrum. Like, are you over functioning or are you under functioning? Is really what anxiety and depression kind of look like. And so, just looking at my notes here, nutrition's an area we can make instant change with mental health. Like, it's an easy place to change. It's a quick, almost even change. Like, you can see an uptick in your mental clarity with just stop drinking soda and eating processed sugar like fruit roll-ups every day. You're going to be able to do a little bit more. Your activity level is going to go up. When your activity level goes up, your brain becomes clearer. Abby mentioned the lack of minerals and nutrition in our food. There's an aspect of our when we experience trauma, our brain is demineralized. And now there's a space of our brain has no ability to replace a lot of those minerals just based on eating even healthy. We're so minerally deficient that our body can't maybe even be resilient enough to overcome some of the things that might be adverse but might not be traumatizing to us. But now because our system's so deficient, we might becoming more traumatized easily or more sensitive to trauma. The gut brain axis, we talk about microbiomes, and which is not an area of my expertise, but it's a word in the ether that we're even talking about here that you ladies know much more about than I do. But when the Bible references our heart, it's not talking about our heart, it's talking about our guts. Why is it talking about our guts? That's our emotional center. I mean, that's how we understand a lot of again, the microbiome, like all these things are connected to our brain. And the direct line between your gut and your brain, this axis, is so important. Lack of nutrients in your gut affects serotonin levels and your ability to create neuroreceptors and neurogenesis to keep your brain kind of turning over each month or each week or whatever it is. And then just simply, people emotionally eat. This is the way people cope. It's an addiction. What's the addictive quality of it mostly? It's usually sugar, because that's the most addictive thing, or alcohol if we're going to use that as a consumption piece. But
Alcohol breaks down into sugar,
well,
so
sure.
it's the same
I mean,
thing.
or
Yeah,
carbs. Like people like to eat bread,
yeah,
and they're like,
yeah.
"But it's just bread." And I'm like, "Yeah, bread's great. I love bread. Bread on the couch is going to turn into sugar. Bread on a walk is going to turn into carbohydrates. So it turns into energy as opposed to just fat." But emotional eating, that's a big piece of this. We have habit loops of eating that creates deficiency because when you eat only certain things on repeat, or you keep doing the same thing over and over and you want something different to happen, well, guess what? How can it be different? And then lastly, just our blood sugar levels. If we're the most obese nation in the world, we're probably the most diabetic nation in the world, and we probably have lots of people experience sugar crashes, blood sugar crashes, like not having clear brains, brain fog, etc. And that can be scary. That can be anxiety inducing. And so there's just a lot here. And so I think simple changes in nutrition help support your mental health. That's maybe the summary statement on my end. It doesn't need to be huge, and it doesn't need to be a complete swing. It can just be drink more water. It could be, I don't know, stop drinking soda. It could literally mean have a salad. Like, or if you're going to eat that burger for lunch, what are you going to have for dinner that's going to balance out that?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that nutrition as an easy and somewhat quick shift that people can make. I think oftentimes when I'm talking to clients and family and friends, um, when I ask them, a lot of what Abby and I do is talk through supplements and use supplementation or encourage people to use supplementation in their diet. But a kind of way that I explain nutrition oftentimes is this is a ground zero approach to your health. If you're not eating nutritious foods and you're not drinking water and you're not getting adequate sleep, those are really easy places to start that aren't going to cost you a whole lot of extra money. And if you could take all the supplements in the world, and if you're not eating well, then you're in battle with the supplements that you're giving your body. If you're not sleeping well, you're hijacking your circadian rhythm and your hormones. And so I think of that. I love that you named that as a quick and easy place to start because it is. And the reason it is because it's accessible to everybody. But I think in order for people to get there, they have to value how they feel, and they have to value shifting, like just taking a little bit of their energy and shifting it into thinking through how they're going to eat. Go ahead.
but it's so uncomfortable, Kirsten. I don't want to be uncomfortable. Don't make me be uncomfortable.
Don't make me be
But it,
uncomfortable.
I mean, it's uncomfortable, but it's also it's unknown for many people.
Well,
Yeah.
because
So,
it's uncomfortable. We're so comfort idol rich in our
yeah.
society specifically. I'm not talking about the world because we're way too comfortable here. So I think there's just like a space of part of my job is people coming in and being normalized for you guys, I imagine as well. Like, no, 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 no. Like, yeah, that stinks, but part of it's just being human.
Well, some of it, I think what I meant by the unknown is that I think of a client that I had when I first did my nutrition aspect of the practice, and she really didn't know how to feed herself. Her mom had cooked homemade meals her whole life, but she'd never really liked being in a kitchen. She didn't really learn anything from her mom. And so here she was, she's having kids, which in and of itself is a nutrition stealer for a mom. And if you're carrying a baby, and anyways, that's a whole nother podcast season. But she didn't drink a lot of water. She loved drinking hot chocolate. And she did eat a lot of processed carbs, sugars, food. There was a lot of boxed things happening in her home and not a lot of fresh things. And so, as we started working on her digestion and her water intake and weaning down off of those sugars, she started feeling better. She had more energy. She noticed her anxiety going away and not feeling as overwhelmed by raising her four girls. And it was really cool. And so, she's seeing this over the course of a month or two. And then I think it was like her grandparents had their 50th anniversary or something, and she's going back to family and she's kind of nervous, you know? And I said, "You're okay. Like, they're going to have cake. Have a piece of cake. Celebrate your grandparents. This is okay. You have been working really hard. This is what celebration looks like. Not eating cake every day for breakfast so that when it is a special thing." But what was wild is she had two pieces of cake, totally fine, right? She ate two pieces of cake that night and she said she woke up the next morning riddled with anxiety. And so for
Mhm.
her, she finally got to connect it. And I think for so many, there is a slow fade where anxiety slowly starts at some point in your life. And like you mentioned, Taylor, if you've had trauma and you're deficient in minerals, ain't no amount of strawberries going to fix that when they're already malnourished strawberries to begin with. And so we've got this kind of gap. And then you have kids and you have all these other things happening, and you just don't know what you don't know. But to switch your food, you will feel it, you will experience it, but you have to
Yeah.
try. And just because your medical doctor doesn't tell you to do it doesn't mean that it's wrong. He just doesn't know.
Yeah.
or she doesn't know, you know?
My rebuttal oftentimes to that, but you want me to change that's really hard. I don't like that's uncomfortable is, but you're really uncomfortable right now. Life is really hard right now.
Yeah.
So you can keep doing what you're doing. You can stay here. You don't have to change, but you're sitting in my office because you want to feel better. And this is bare minimum what you could do.
But
Yeah.
but I mean, really, that you make it. It is so simple. It is relatively straightforward. But like what you run into is that people recognize they are uncomfortable now, but it's a known discomfort.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
happens here, as opposed to like that. That's a
Yeah.
giant lake, and I don't know where the edges are, and I don't
Yeah.
know how deep it is, and I could drown, and I'm like, you're not going to drown by getting more sleep. You're not going to drown by not drinking soda. You're just going to be uncomfortable.
But in that, let's bring it back to a part of why we're here as a podcast, community, right? And we try really hard in our offices to be community for people, but we can't because if if someone's married to a spouse who is a night owl and goes to bed at 1 and they haven't figured that out, sleep is that is going to be a really hard thing to
Hmm.
fix because well, I stay up late with my husband and that's where we connect and or my kids hate eating and I don't want to fight at the end of the day over dino nuggies versus whatever it is I'm trying to feed them, right? So there's so much of the community aspect that we have to help them address too.
Yeah.
And so if you are one of those people listening to this podcast and you're like, that's it, I don't have, who can you find in your circle that's going to be that person for you, who's going to normalize the change? Because a lot of people don't. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Food is food." But yeah, a fast food restaurant. Let's start at the very beginning. Can we just say you mentioned shopping on the
40,
Yeah,
outside?
40
let's
minutes in. Let's
40
just start
minutes
to the
let's
in,
go back to
basics.
let's
those
go back.
labels.
You talked about going to the grocery store and shopping on the outside, and when you were talking, I thought to myself, we have to take a step back even more. And my first thing that I tell people is you cannot fuel yourself where you fuel up your car. The food that you're going to grab at a gas station is not good for you.
But Quick
I
Trip.
don't
But Quick
care.
Trip. But
I know. And now they have a kitchen at Quick Trip and
Bucky's? Are you
all the
telling me
signs.
Bucky's is not a like? Come on, that has a
Bucky's.
kitchen. That's a literal kitchen.
I walked into a Quick Trip, a newer one in St. Louis not too long ago, and I was floored. I mean, it looks like you're at a straight up deli. This is somebody's mom's deli that she's, and I was like, this is not real food, you know? So I just want to take it back and say, there are a lot of ways you can get fast food without going to Quick Trip or McDonald's or whatever. Like grocery stores can be fast food. You can run in and grab something. They have pre-made salads. They have, you could just grab a banana and a tub of organic peanut butter, and that's fast food. Cheese sticks, fast food. Like there are so many things that we can do that we don't think about. And so just trying to shift out of what we think is fast food, that can be so helpful. And so I just wanted to revisit that as some practical steps too, of just like
Yeah.
fast food can be a lot of things.
Yeah. An orange can be a fast food.
And you know what's interesting, especially in the space of like obesity taking over, like that's part of it too, is our body's relearning what appropriate caloric intake is supposed to be. And so there was actually a Wash U study here in St. Louis called the longevity diet that took place. And it was a long term study, which we don't get a lot in science because we're trying to make these quick assumptions. And they were actually showing that those people who lived longer and were healthier ate 1,500 calories every 2 days. So we think of a healthy woman in America, we say should eat 1,500 calories a day. But when we talk about the SAD diet, there's a whole lot of difference between a calorie in a can of sardines and a calorie in a Snickers bar. Like They're wildly
Yeah.
different. And so that's where Weight Watchers and those types of things can be kind of tricky because you're counting calories, but you're eating stuff that they've pre-made and it's not all nutritious, but it's a calorie. And so it's how do we balance if your snack is an orange, it might not fill you up right away, but over time it will if your body retrains itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's uncomfortable too because we're like, oh, I'm hungry, and it's like, well, your body's readapting to what you're giving it, but it can do a lot of work on a little bit of, we call it like nutrient dense foods, right? There's low calorie nutrient dense foods that we can eat that really fuel us better than high calorie nutrient empty
And so
foods.
much about eating is habitual, right? And so you just get in
Mhm.
habits of grabbing. And it's not so much that people are overeating at all meals, but they're overeating because they snack all the time. Because I think you've said this, Abby, to our kids, you're not hungry, you're thirsty. Like,
I tell that to Griffin
yeah,
like every
like drink
day.
some water. When's the last time you drink water? And so I think that's just a piece that people don't, it's a psycho piece of like, no, like pay attention to what you're eating between meals more often than not than what you're actually eating at meals. Because you could be eating really great at meals, but you've been snacking on like Cheetos in
Hmm.
between, and it's just not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain is getting stuck on it's because I know where I would have been 15 years ago had I been listening to this podcast. And you just mentioned 1,500 calories. And I'm thinking, man, there are lots of days where number one, I don't count calories in general at all. Number
Yeah.
two, there are lots of days where I believe I eat way more than 1,500 calories. And so I'm thinking about the people who might, some people who I know who might latch onto that and go, oh, she said 1,500 calories. Do I need to start paying attention to the number of calories that I get? And is it really
Mhm.
1,500? What if I should be getting less in order to lose weight? Or what if I
Yeah.
can't sustain, I feel super hungry. Like just those, what would you say to those people
Yeah.
who hear that and latch onto the calorie piece?
Yeah, I don't like numbers. I think numbers are horrible and I don't do math. So
What?
that's where my mindset comes from of, oh, let's just not. Like I have my own eating disorder history and that, so scales, numbers, not a healthy place for me. So if you're one of those people who is latching on to numbers for control, kind of like we talked about in season 1, then you need to take a step back. We need to come off the scale. We need to stop focusing on all the tiny numbers and fretting over the ups and downs of all the day. And we need to take a breath in that spot and check our heart of like, why are you counting calories? Is it a control thing? Is it a weight loss thing? Is it a fear thing? Right? It's not going to help if it's all based in fear. It's just going to riddle you with anxiety. So that's number one. Number two is if you're not that person and you really are earnestly trying to learn, then the next step is, I think, what you were going to talk about, Kirsten, of label reading and what are we looking at? Because again, everybody is different. Where we get these numbers of 1,500 calories are coming from research stuff, but research is limited by its participants, their health status, the people who are running the research
Their
projects.
age?
And so, yes. And so, in the space of the longevity research at WashU, that's what came out of that 1,500. But those are different bodies than a lot of people dealing with chronic disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes. Like they weren't in that study. They don't. I think that's one thing people don't understand about studies is they pick the healthiest of the healthy when they're doing general studies because they don't want a lot of cofactors in there. You don't want a lot of different pieces mudding up your results. And so if you are somebody who has a couple conditions, then we need to just shift more to looking at what you're eating and not necessarily the amount. And that can go far. So let's kind of shift to that, if you don't mind, Kirsten, and talk about what you wanted to say about labels.
Labels, label reading. All right. So I'm a visual person, and if I were listening to this podcast right now, I'd be like, I need to write this down and also look at a chart. So I am going to try to give an overview to not overwhelm people with information, but also I have homework for people. Not homework, as in they have to show
Our
code.
teachers coming out. I
Yeah.
love
I
it.
used to be a teacher. Used to be a teacher. All right. So, labels. How are you going to grocery shop? This is how I would practically take what we have been talking about and apply it to the grocery store. Looking at fruits and vegetables and how they are grown, I would encourage people to look up the difference between organic, non GMO, and conventional. I'm not going to go into those right now because there's so much to go. There are just too many details to cover. But just because something is labeled non GMO, that is not the same as organic. And I want people to go look that up for themselves and read about it. You can find quick graphics. It's there. The definitions of those things are not overwhelming, but it will open your eyes to understand a little bit more about what you're eating and what you're choosing when you decide to shop the produce aisles. Number two, looking at meats and the labels natural, pasture raised, grass fed, or grass fed and finished. These actually, people could take that and they could look at those things as well.
I would say those are things that even as a practitioner for years, I'm like,
Oh,
oh, they're so confusing.
they are. And basically, if we are thinking about shopping the perimeter, if you start by just shopping the perimeter and you have been someone that is typically buying a lot of processed foods, when you make that small shift and you are like, I'm going to start making more home cooked meals with meat and fruits and vegetables, that alone is a great initial step. So you don't have to go deep and look at natural,
I agree.
pasture raised, grass fed, and grass finished. But if somebody wanted to go deeper, those are the few things the labels that I would look into. And a lot of it has to do with the way that the meat is processed, the way that the animals are treated throughout their lifestyle, and kind of the highest rank of the gold standard is the grass fed and grass finished. And the idea behind that is giving the animals the food that their bodies were meant to and that's the easiest for them to digest, and that the way that the animals are treated throughout their life changes the quality of the meat that we get when we eat. So those are great terms to look into. But if we look at just reading nutrition labels, I like to think of this as green light, yellow light, red light, if I'm picturing a chart in my head. Green light, absolute green light, would be fruits and vegetables and good meat, good quality whole foods that are living and grown. But looking at nutrition labels and ingredient lists, I would encourage people to first look at the ingredient list instead of the nutrition labels. Our diet culture, counting calories culture, has really promoted the nutrition labels and how many grams of sugar, how many grams of fat, how many grams of protein are in the foods. Those are cool things to look at, and you can read about nutrition labels and what that means. But really, I would look at the ingredient list first. The order of the ingredients matters. So the whole foods should, if you're looking at a food label where and the in the ingredient list where the first few ingredients are whole foods, that's like a green light. If you see a mix of whole foods and refined ingredients, I would say that's a yellow light. If you're looking at um, a list where there are lots of long, hard to pronounce additives and artificial ingredients and chemicals that you have no idea what they are, I would say red light. Like maybe don't choose that one. Green light also for me is going to be a shorter list, fewer ingredients, like 5 to 10 ingredients would be great. If you're looking at a really long list that's overwhelming to you and you don't know how to process it, probably stay away from those foods. I would also look at the fiber content when you do get to reading the nutrition label. Higher fiber content typically means it's closer to a whole food derivative. Yeah, there. Should I keep going into more detail with this? I'll
I
kind
think
of
that's
stop
great.
here.
I think that's a great give people that space. I love that you delineated. Look, if you're coming from eating more processed foods, just going to the outside is enough,
Yeah,
right? If you're somebody who's been shopping the outside and you want to take the next step, then going into those details is enough. If you're somebody who has kids who are super, super picky, start bringing them into the kitchen or I know going shopping with kids is a pain in the tushy, and I used to love going to the grocery store by myself. It was like I loved it. But I mean, we are approaching spring here, and as we record this right now, spend a Saturday morning at the farmer's market. Get your kids involved. My kids love to go to the farmer's market and find fruits and vegetables that we don't see at the regular grocery store, but also to get them used to seeing fruits and vegetables that look funny,
Hmm.
right? Like how much of our grocery stores, I mean, I've heard that they throw stuff away because they don't look right. That's not normal. That's
Hmm.
not what food looks like. And those imperfections are great. And so to see that at the store, or I mean at the farmer's market, and show your kids that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think that goes so deep, right? We're imperfect and we have wounds and we don't know. You like we can go everywhere with that, but just bringing your kids into the space of learning about what they're eating and teaching them what you're learning on your journey, I think will go a long way for their health
Yeah.
too.
I gave
Sorry. Taylor looked like he wanted to say something.
I was trying to think, do I have anything to say here? Actually,
Oh,
I was
sorry.
like, do I have anything to add? I don't know if I do.
I gave a challenge to a client recently, and I said, see if you can find a client who didn't really care about fruits and vegetables. And my challenge was, see if you can find two new fruits and two new vegetables that you are okay with. Just
It's a
in
good
the
one.
next month. Just try some. If you take one bite of different vegetables and fruits and you don't like them, cool. You don't have to eat the rest of it, but just take some bites and see if there's one that you might find, or maybe two that you might find. So I'm thinking about
Yeah.
that in the same vein as going to the farmer's market and just looking at the different textures and of the foods and seeing things that you might not see at the grocery store.
The other thing I was going to say is if you're in a space where money is really tight, right? So I know when I call it when Jesus was paying our bills, we were broke. And there's a space of where like you might just be eating beans and rice for a while because you just can't afford all the stuff that's fresh and organic. That's totally fine. Things to remember is that frozen fruits and
Mm-hmm.
vegetables are a good second option to fresh versus the canned peaches. I think of just like the syrup and all the stuff they're in, or the canned green beans and the stuff that I grew up in. We had a lot of canned vegetables and fruits when I was a kid, and not the ones my great grandma was canning, right? These were the ones in the store. But through the years, those have gotten more and more toxic. And they're starting to back down. I mean, our dollars are starting to change the system a little bit. But in general, if you're trying to save money, go to the freezer section for a lot of those before you just go to the canned section. That's another little tidbit.
Hey everyone, Taylor here from the New Dominion podcast. I wanted to let you know that we had a plan of recording these first two episodes of season two together all at once. And so, because of the overlap of the content of supplements and nutrition and food, we just didn't know where to break it. So we just kind of picked this spot here as a natural breaking point. We didn't want to make the content too long, and we didn't want to make it overwhelming. So yeah, we're cutting it here, and then join us next week for part two of this conversation, which is about just basically continuing this one on. We look forward to you joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the New Dominion podcast. We love engaging in curious and faithful conversations with you, and we hope you've enjoyed these episodes. If you have, please leave us a review, share it with your bestie, and comment below on what you want to hear, and we will see you next episode.